What's up, guys? Thank you for joining me on part one of our multi-part series on electrical safety. Today we're going to be taking a look at how electricity works, some terminology you need to know, along with two basic principles of electricity that you need to know to keep yourself safe. Check it out. Before you go touching any wires in your house, you need to know what electricity even is and why it's so dangerous. So electricity, very simply, is just the flow of electrons in a circuit. What's a circuit? A circuit is defined as a complete circular path that electricity flows through, consisting of a power source, conductors, and a load. When electricity is only flowing in one direction, this is called direct current, or DC. You'll find direct current in battery-operated devices. In the case of residential electricity, you'll find that they use alternating current. Unlike direct current, this happens when the polarity of the power source switches 60 times a second. Your home runs off of 240 volts alternating current at 60 hertz. So what makes up a circuit? A circuit is made up of volts, amps, and ohms. The best way to describe these three is to picture a water pipe. Picture a water pipe with a big tank at the end of it that's holding water. That pressure in the tank is going to be your voltage. At the other end of that pipe, there's going to be a valve. When you release that valve and let that water run through, that's going to be your amps or your current. Now, in the middle of that pipe, we're going to make it a lot smaller in diameter at one spot. This is going to be resistance or ohms. So your volts pushes your electrons through the conductor, which is called amps. Somewhere in your circuit, you're going to have resistance. Resistance is going to be in the form of whatever power, whatever you're trying to give power to, whether it be a light bulb or a washing machine or whatever it is. There's going to be resistance there. Electricity needs resistance to make work. In a light bulb, for example, the resistance is going to be in the filament. There's resistance because that filament is super duper small. And one of the things that creates resistance, like in our pipe example, is when that pipe gets a lot smaller, it creates resistance, which creates heat, which creates the light you see in the filament. It's also why a light bulb is hot. Now, volts, amps, and ohms all relate to each other in what's called Ohm's law. We don't need to get too much into this, but Ohm's law is basically voltage equals resistance times amps. If you want to learn more about Ohm's law, you can Google it later. I'm not going to get that big into it right now. Now, there is way more to electricity than what I just explained. That's why people go to school for 4 years to learn about it. Remember, we are DIYers. We are not electricians. I am not an electrician. You're probably not an electrician either. And if you are, why are you watching my video? You're probably no more than I do. So, now we have two rules of electricity to talk about. Electricity has many principles. There's many rules for electricity, and you can look them all up on Google. But there are two that I think are very relevant to make sure that you keep yourself safe. One, electricity will always return to its source. What does that even mean? In the case of household electricity, that's going to be your transformer outside. So the source of your electricity starts there. So your current in your house is always trying to get back to that transformer. We're going to take a look at a later video of how that actually happens. But you need to know that electricity is always trying to get back to that transformer. And it doesn't matter how it gets there, which leads us to our second rule. Number two, electricity will take any and all paths to get back to its source, but prefers the one with least resistance. So what does that mean? So we talked about resistance earlier in the form of ohms. This is a little different. In a dedicated circuit, current has to pass through resistance to make work. However, if electricity has more than one path to take, it's going to choose the path with least resistance. This is extremely crucial to remember when it comes to safety, because you need to make sure that the electricity is going through that path of least resistance. That is why if you have a loose wire in a live circuit somewhere and you touch that live wire, you could make yourself the path of least resistance because it's not connected to the other wire to make that circuit. You have become the circuit, which is why you get electrocuted. And you are probably going to be the path of least resistance. Now, let's vice versa here. This is also why welders can weld on a table, a metal table, and have their arm on the table and not get electrocuted, because you have a dedicated circuit from that lead through the arc into your ground clamp. Current is going to take that path because it is less resistance than your body. This is why when we get into wiring boxes and lights, it is utmost important to make sure that the connections that you're wiring are solid. That's it for part 1. Part 2, we're going to be taking a look at an actual breaker panel. So we'll see you next time. Stay safe and keep on doing it yourself.